Alright. Welcome back to the podcast. Maybe you guys have been here, and I should be welcoming myself back to my own podcast because I have been a bit on the absent end. Um, studying a lot for podcasting reasons, and studying a lot just for reasons of that's what I do for fun. And because I have a class that I'm involved with, and so I'm studying for class, finishing that thing up. Anyways, happy Hanukkah, happy first day portion of multiple days. I'm not gonna get into all the exact details of Hanukkah, but there's a song that I really like that I tend to play a lot this time of year. It's I mean I don't mm, so sometimes it's called Hanuros Hallelujah, sometimes it's Hanurot Hallelujah. The way it's spelled has the letter that represents T in Hebrew at the end, but I've noticed for some cultural reason that I do not fully understand, I think I could be so wrong on this, but I think from men pronounce the I think the letter is called a tough, and they pronounce it as suf. I don't know why, but I started noticing that a long time ago. Like every time you see that letter written, it was always pronounced as an S sound instead of a T sound. And someone pointed out, I guess there was a video I was watching where, a long time ago, where this YouTuber Heshi Freed, from satire, he's really funny. He's like a comedian type of guy, from Comedian, and he basically would just film like just kind of little funny rants about little cultural things. As someone who's not Jewish, I never really fully could like laugh at it because it was like it felt a little strange for me laughing at a different culture. Like, it's almost like when I listen to Asian comedians talking about like Asian, themes, like maybe stereotypical themes of things that they experience, or like using like those kind of accents, like maybe imitating their parents or people in their communities with like a funny accent, and I'm just kind of like, it's funny, but it's like, like, can I laugh if I'm, just kind of like I don't know, it kind of, for some reason, that religious content really resonated with me, even though I'm not that religion, but just because I'd been studying it for so long and involved with a messianic congregation for a while, with the family friend rabbi and the congregation, small congregation of people, and growing up Adventist, we have a little bit of things that get picked and chosen from the Old Testament as far as the dietary related things, and as far as the Sabbath, even though we aren't really doing it exactly like as the Jewish law says, and like based on how like scholars and sages would kind of explain, the Jewish tradition, like we would I would say that we do like a very basic version, not to the extent that, okay, when you go to worship at church on the Sabbath, you're like walking to church and like living within a walkable distance, or not turning on your lights, or like fully never ever purchasing or buying anything, or not watching TV and all that kind of stuff. Like there's still, especially nowadays, I feel like with the internet, people have gotten a lot more relaxed with not using media, and I don't know any churches that really talk about. I mean, I'm not really like actively listening to what they're saying lately, but I mean, I haven't heard any churches talking about like cell phone use. Kind of like back in my day, there was definitely the conversation surrounding television use and radio use, and if you were going to use it, it should be like Sabbath friendly content. So anything about the Bible or about nature, you could kind of engage with that type of content, but otherwise, you couldn't really just be like watching MTV or something. But now that everybody has cell phones, I think ever since the BlackBerry, where people started like having their phones during church and like checking emails and stuff like that during church, and like I remember people who didn't use the internet when I was growing up, like they didn't go on the internet because it was like a household desktop. But yeah, anyways, like yeah, I can kind of relate on that end of just being culturally surrounded by people who follow all these laws and things, but you know, um, the from Jewish experience is a lot more intensive. So all that, just talking about just like the just even down to the words, written words, how they're spoken. Like I remember Heshi Fried was saying, like, as I guess he was filming a portion of the wedding service, I guess after the reception or so, where they were dancing. There's like a group of people dancing with the bride and groom to the Yichud room. Like basically, they're officially married. They're consummating the marriage. Um, and people, there's like a procession, I guess, of people. Maybe like their friends. It seemed like it was more like people around their own age, because these people looked like they were all in their 20s. And so one thing he mentioned is that there were men and women dancing together to the room, like singing this song. I don't remember what the song was. It was a different song, not the one I'm talking about. Um, and they said that he said it was both men and women dancing together, not with each other, but they were dancing like in the same procession together. In this hotel, I guess it was. And then they were dancing towards where the room was going to be, and then as they're all singing the song like through the hallway and stuff, and then basically the women were also pronouncing that letter that's like a T. They were also pronouncing it as an S sound. And I don't remember what he said about it. But I guess that was something that didn't happen as often, I guess. And I don't know exactly why they pronounce it that way. I've noticed, like, when I did visit a synagogue, people pronounced that word, I mean, that letter as a T. I think I went to what was it? Um, hmm, like I went. It was a bar mitzvah for a kid or a guy who was there, who was a member of that congregation, and um, I went for a college project. We had to do these like cultural immersion types of things where you'd have to go to like a cultural event. So I remember I went to a powwow before, and then I went to for one project, and then this next project was a synagogue. But I remember calling the synagogue, and the lady was like, "What's your name and where do you live?" And I was telling her, and she's like, "Yeah, your last name doesn't sound Jewish," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not." And she was like, "How far do you live?" and all that, and I was like, saying like it wasn't that far. It was probably like a little bit of a drive, but it wasn't that far. And I remember I went to go pick up my friend first, though, and then we were running late, of course, because the friend was late. And we went into the temple, and so basically, it wasn't people in like t-shirts and shorts. I think it was conservative, not reform. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Um, because everyone had their, like kind of like long sleeve button ups and slacks for the guys, and all had yarmulkes, and then the women, everyone was just kind of wearing what they were wearing, but it wasn't orthodox or ultra orthodox. It was open to the community, and it was a bar mitzvah, so people are allowed to like invite family, friends, classmates, whatever. So we weren't the only like visitors there. Um, but yeah, I remember her asking like, "Oh yeah, if you live that far, you probably can't walk." And I'm just kind of like I know that that's like part of a custom to like, you know, as part of being observant, on the Sabbath, not driving to and from synagogue, but to be able to walk. And I guess I technically could have walked, but it's like there's no way I was gonna walk. Um, but anyways, yeah. So this song piece that I like, I don't really know much about it. I just know that I like it. I've liked it for years, probably since I was like 20 something years old. And uh, so basically, this I have an art scroll weekday sitter. So a sitter is basically it's like so much information for this time of morning. A sitter is basically like a prayer book. It has all the prayers that a person would need for during the weekday. Um, and so, it even has a little bit of holiday information. So this is the Art Scroll brand um, of the weekday sitter, um, meaning it does it? Let me see. I don't know. Let me see, does it? So it has the weekday service, the prayers that you have like when you're first waking up. So the chakras for weekdays, so basically like the morning service that people would pray like as davening, and then mincha for weekdays, marv for weekdays, so it's like afternoon and evening prayers for the weekdays. And then it has Hallel, Musaf of Rosh Kadesh, Hanukkah, and Purim. But I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, then it has death and bereavement. I'm not gonna read all the stuff that's in it, but basically, it doesn't have the it doesn't have the Shabbat, the Shabbat service, the all the Sabbath service in here, because that is a whole service itself that it has like a liturgical portion that you would basically read. There's a lot of reading and a lot of reciting and chanting and kind of back and forth, like congregation says this, the leader says this, the congregation says this kind of thing. So all that isn't in here. That's why this one's actually thinner, and that's probably why it was cheaper. But it does have the Hanukkah, some Hanukkah stuff in it. It says see Art Scroll Hanukkah for a full commentary and the laws and customs of Hanukkah. So it doesn't have the full commentary and laws and customs of Hanukkah. It does have basically some commentary. So it has basically this section that says kindling the Hanukkah menorah, and it's these blessings at the beginning, and then it goes into that song that I said I liked, and then this other, I guess the translation is "Oh Mighty Rock," but I don't know what, I don't really know that one. And then it has all these other, I don't know what all this is. It's I'm still trying to figure out what it is basically. Half of it's written in Hebrew, the other half is in English, and the English is like some kind of English that I find very hard to understand. It's not like King James Bible type of English. It's just written in this really scholarly, strange way, that I'm not familiar with. Like, just the flow of it is just a little odd for me. It's kind of like when you read the Bible, if you read like, the King James version of the Bible versus the New International version of the Bible versus I mean, my favorite version of the Bible is the New Revised Standard version of the Bible. And then there's the other, the New Living Translation. There's all these translations and versions of the Bible. And some of them you read and it's just like reading like a flowy letter or like a storybook kind of thing. And some of them you read and you're like, every line you're like, I don't even know what that means. Like King James is like ultra poetic, and it's just like nobody talks like that in real life. And this is kind of like in a weird way like that. Not really. It's almost written like a textbook. That's the best I can describe it. It's like a textbook. Um, so basically, the description for that song, it just takes certain phrases and explains them. Um, and so it's kind of weird to like talk about music, I think. But I think that's one thing that goes a little missing with religious type of things is people don't really talk about the meanings of the music. It's just like there, and people are like, oh yeah, there's some kind of musical component, and people just, I don't know. The faith that I grew up in, people just tend to argue about the music. They weren't really too involved in diving deep into the meanings. They were just like, is it evil because it has a certain beat, or is it, can we use the drums or clap? Is clapping okay? People would be having these conversations for like years, and it's like, all right, but what does the song even mean? So like, this one kind of, it doesn't break it down line by line, but it's like portions. So it says like the part that says upon the miracles and upon the wonders, like basically when it comes to Hanukkah, like it's basically, the way I would describe it just as a basic description is a historical war, or a historical battle type of event that had some supernatural components that happened. That's probably the easiest explanation that I could give. And the supernatural components had a lot of significance to the Jewish people. And so it says, upon the miracles and upon the wonders. The word miracles refers to the obvious acts of intervention of It says His divine providence in first letter, capital first letters. This word can also mean banners or signposts. It says, for God's miracles are meant to be signposts and symbols that stand out to teach and guide us. The term, they have it here in Hebrew, for wonders describes these extraordinary occurrences in terms of their independence from the regular order of things. And then they cite the rabbi there. And then they have another explanation. It says, of part of the song that says, and we are not permitted to make ordinary use of them, talking about the lights, the candle lights. It says it is forbidden to use the Hanukkah lights for any personal purpose, such as reading or doing work by their illumination. And then they cite this, I don't know, from Shabbos 21b. I don't know what book that's from. I don't know if that's from the Talmud or if it's from some other book, but it says lest one slight the mitzvos, and they say mitzvos instead of mitzvot, but I don't know. The prohibition against benefiting from the lights makes it manifestly clear to all that they were kindled for the sole purpose of commemorating the miracle. And so the lights are used only for, the commemoration of the miracle that happened, and not for like, okay, I'm lighting this menorah and gonna walk around my house and like, use it to like illuminate my path when I'm walking or something like that. The term, I'm reading on the other side. It says, in compliance with the prohibition against benefiting from the lights, we light a shamash, which is literally translated as servant flame, which is that first like middle tall flame, which is not holy, so that any incidental pleasure that comes from the lights can be considered as coming from the shamash. And there's one more small paragraph that talks about the part that says, in order to express thanks and praise to your great name. The explanation for that says, that is by refraining from utilizing the Hanukkah lights for anything but the mitzvah itself, and by contemplating them while they burn, we make it apparent to all that our intent is to popularize the miracle and to praise God's great name with a capital N, in acknowledgement of his with a capital H, great miracles. And so basically, all that being said, the purpose of celebrating Hanukkah is the commemoration, mitzvah, praising God, and just basically doing the rituals for those reasons, and to kind of spread the information about it, which is interesting. I mean, I find it interesting. I find it very interesting, actually, that it does mention in the New Testament, in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, about Jesus, celebrating Hanukkah. A lot of places call it Festival of Lights, or Feast of Lights. You hear that a lot too, as kind of like a translation of what is happening, kind of. I do find it interesting, though, that even though it does talk about, Jesus being involved with it in the New Testament, I've never heard of a Christian church that actually goes too much into depth of what happens at Hanukkah or why. Like, I didn't learn. You think about all the church I went to, all the times I was in churches, multiple different types of churches, even though we had one main congregation we went to, but I was all over LA visiting different churches, and I never once heard anybody tell the exact Hanukkah story ever in a church. Like, nobody ever mentioned it. They would talk basics, just about as basic as I explained in the beginning, about like, oh yeah, the Jewish people do this, and like they might mention that Jesus did it. But even during this time of year, Hanukkah is, uh, it follows the Jewish calendar, so it's on a certain day of the month of Kislev, and because it's a lunar calendar, it follows a different pattern, so it's not always the same as Christmas. Sometimes it starts on Christmas, sometimes Christmas is encompassed within the days. Like this year, Hanukkah is December 19th, ending on December 26th, and Christmas is December 25th. And so the second to last day of Hanukkah is going to be the same day as Christmas. But nobody ever really in church ever really talked about Hanukkah, which was weird to me. Um, I found that super strange. They just like breezed over it, like like hey, you don't need to know this, or like we don't want. The way I always interpreted that wasn't that you don't need to know this. It was more like we don't want to confuse people or for people to get too much knowledge about other cultures. That seems to be dangerous in the eyes of the church, for people to kind of learn different things. And especially when it comes to Judaism, I always found it interesting that the church doesn't really seem to want to learn about Judaism. It learns about the Bible from its own kind of perspective of the Bible. Now, the story of Hanukkah, it doesn't take place in the Old or New Testament, but in the Apocrypha, in the Maccabees. I don't know what book. I'll have to get that information. But in the book of Maccabees, I don't know. I think there's like first, second, and third Maccabees, if I'm not mistaken. I could be way wrong because I'm rusty on all this, but um, the story of the Maccabees. It was a uh, people, Jewish people. That was their lineage. The Maccabees were like a group of Jewish people, um, and they revolted basically, and God sustained them past what was expected. Um, Without that, they likely, technically, would have been like in like sports or wars. This is a terrible example, but there's always like the perspective, the prospecting, prospecting of like who should win, who should lose. Like this group has all these resources or all these skills, and that group has none. Like the Maccabees weren't as well off, and were not supposed to win. Basically, we'll put it that way. And so that's why this is commemorated. Um, and it goes deep. Like it just goes deep. I have this episode from way back. One of the first episodes I think I posted of somebody that I was, you know, studying with that congregation with Rabbi Greg de Valera, and it was basically talking about Christmas and all those kind of things, but that trying to you know um, cleanse the unpurified sacrifice of a pig on the altar. There are reasons why the Jews couldn't use their temple. And, you know, the Maccabean revolt was a big player in helping the Jewish people to be able to better practice their faith, because they were being persecuted. Um, it's there's a lot, and it's kind of like, okay, why do we never learn any of this? Like, I don't know. I feel like Christian churches need to step it up and like be real and just be like, look, if it's in there and you're gonna say that you're gonna teach the Bible, just read the Bible and teach it. Don't just like skip things. But I think the reason they do that is because there's a lot that they'd have to explain. I feel like it's almost like when a parent is like reading, like, say if they're reading a story to their kid or something, and the story has a lot of maybe what they would consider like adult themes, and they might just like talk about it or just maybe dumb it down or make it like child friendly or skip it altogether because they're like, I don't want to have to explain sex to my kids, or I don't want to explain drugs to my kids, or like they don't need to know about this, at all or yet. Or usually it's like yet. With kids, it's like they don't need to know about this yet. But I feel like churches take a stance like they don't need to know about this at all. And so they just don't teach things that they don't want to teach. And, um, I think, a lot of Christians don't know about Hanukkah. I wasn't raised learning about it. I knew it existed, and I never knew what it was. I just thought it was Christmas. I just thought Jewish people had a longer Christmas, and that's what it was. Like, I don't know what I thought they were celebrating, but I thought it was cool. I'm like, oh, they light candles at night for Christmas, and I just assumed they're probably sitting around a tree singing songs in Hebrew. Like, I didn't know what they were doing. Like, I had no clue. Like, but like my vision of it was like very pagan style, you know, a pagan style worship, kind of like what Christians have, like this kind of pagan traditions of like the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, I talked. Some of my Jewish friends would do like Christmas trees and Christmas gifts and stuff like that. I had Muslim friends that did, Christmas and stuff too. I didn't know any Muslim friends that celebrated Hanukkah. So I feel like it's kind of interesting, just all these like cultural integrations and the stuff that you get to learn because they want to openly teach it, and the stuff you never get to learn. Like, I don't remember when it was in my lifetime when they started to um, talk about the uh what was it? I lost my train of thought. When they started to talk about, instead of calling it like the work or the school or the class Christmas party, they started calling it the holiday party, and being a little more inclusive. I feel like that started happening in my lifetime. Because I remember, we never really considered other people. Like, it was just like Christian Christmas. Like, that was it, and you never really talked about any other things. And I don't think it was because I was a kid. I just think that's how society was. It just wasn't very inclusive. Like, if you were Jewish or you were Muslim or if you were not religious at all, you were not getting represented. Um, and even today, I would still say that most holiday parties do tend to have more of a Christmas theme. I've never gone to one that was like a Kwanzaa themed, holiday party, or like a Hanukkah themed holiday party. It's still Christmas themed. It might have a little bit of sprinkle of other stuff in there, but the colors are Christmassy. You don't see the blues and golds like you would see with Hanukkah. You don't see the, African print colors like you would see with Hanukkah. You see red and green, and I'm not saying it's wrong or like morally incorrect or whatever. Like, I honestly don't care. I just like talking about it because I think it's fascinating and fun. I love history. I am a complete nerd about all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to study differently than I did before. So this year I'm trying to really study um, this sitter kind of information. The stuff that I read was about the song. I'm gonna post the song that I like, the one that I said is by Avraham Fried. I'm gonna post that if I can find it. I'm gonna try and post that episode that Heshi Fried talked uh, about the Yichud room with everyone dancing, and what he said about like the letters and stuff, and the pronunciation and the dancing of two different genders dancing at the same time to the room. There's like video footage of it. It's on YouTube. Like I'm not like, I mean they put it for public, but I think it's, to me it's good cultural representation. It's like, okay, I'm looking at a book from an outsider's perspective. I'm seeing things where I'm like, okay, I've studied Hebrew. Not I'm not like a scholar by any means. Like I can read it, and without somebody telling me what it means, I usually don't really know unless it's stuff I had memorized and I still have contained the information, which usually I forget. But yeah, I just like it because it's fun for me. Like I would rather wake up in the morning and think about this kind of stuff than turn on the news. I mean, I'd rather just like pick up a sitter or like some kind of religious book or listen to some historical thing, especially when it's going on like now. I really like the here and now. I mean, I have some other stuff I want to talk about Yule. I was actually studying about Yule, Yule, more than Hanukkah, which is why I'm a little slacking on my Hanukkah stuff right now. And then I'm also gonna try to see if I can find that episode about um that I posted by the family friend Rabbi Greg De Valera. I have my own episode of it that I think I recorded off of my old iPhone 4 because I had the audio clip saved there, and I think I put my phone side by side and recorded off of there for, it was like an hour or something long, a speech or a talk. I don't know if it was a sermon or like a community lecture. I can't remember, but he was talking and he recorded it himself and shared it with us. And I just like it because it's like, for people who grew up in Christianity and kind of don't maybe know, I try to listen to it once a year. It is very much from a perspective of explaining why, why in Christianity people practice the way that they do around Christmas time. Like the tree, like why do we use this tree, and like, all these things that, like, you never see Christmas trees in the Bible. You never see Christmas plays in the Bible and the manger scene and all that kind of stuff. Like Jesus wasn't, celebrating the festival of lights. He wasn't celebrating Hanukkah with a manger scene and a Christmas tree. And if he was, it wasn't in the Bible. But, all that kind of stuff came later on, um, with the Romans. Um, I'm gonna stop because I gotta start working in like 8 minutes. But I'm gonna try and find those other links to post. And with that, thanks for listening.